So, think about this for a second. How do you actually teach a computer to recognize a face? I mean, it's something you and I do in an instant. We don't even think about it. But for a computer, it's an absolutely massive challenge. Today, we're going to dig into this brilliantly simple idea from back in 1991 that just completely changed the game.
All right, take a look at these. They're ghostly, they're strange, and honestly, they're a little bit creepy. But these weird pictures, which are called Eigenfaces, are the secret sauce behind one of the first truly successful attempts at teaching a computer how to recognize us. So that's the big mystery we're diving into. What in the world are these ghost-like images? And how on earth did they manage to teach a machine a skill that feels so human? To find out, we're going to go straight to the source. We're looking at a groundbreaking paper from 1991 by two researchers, Matthew Turk and Alex Pentland. Their whole approach, which they called Eigenfaces, was a completely new way of thinking about how computers could learn to see. First, let's just take a second to appreciate the core problem they were up against. For us, seeing a face is just easy. But you have to remember, for a computer, a face isn't a face at all. It's just an incredibly difficult puzzle made up of thousands of pixels. And this really shows you that fundamental disconnect. On the left, that's us. We see the whole thing, the eyes, the nose, the expression. But on the right, that's the computer. It just sees a giant grid of numbers, each one representing how bright a single pixel is. It has zero idea what it's looking at. So the huge challenge is, how do you get from that grid of numbers to, oh, hey, that's Sarah? So the first stab at this was pretty literal. Programmers tried to teach computers to do what they thought we do, find specific things, like the corner of an eye or the tip of a nose. But as the paper points out, these methods were really fragile. They'd break completely if the lighting changed or if the person just tilted their head. And this is where Turk and Pentland had their big aha moment. They decided, forget looking for parts of a face. Let's treat the entire face image as just one single thing. Think of it like a giant recipe with thousands of pixel ingredients. Their goal wasn't to find an eye ingredient, it was to find the fundamental patterns, what they called the principal components, that make up the entire landscape of human faces. So, how in the world do you find those patterns? Well, the process kicks off with something that sounds almost way too simple. You just gather a bunch of photos and calculate the average. And here it is. This blurry, kind of generic image is what the paper calls the average face. It's made by literally taking all the pixel values from hundreds of different faces and averaging them out. This becomes the starting point, the sort of neutral canvas from which every other face is measured. Okay, so once you have that average, the next step is to figure out the most important ways that individual faces differ from it. Is it a longer nose, wider set eyes, a broader jaw? The algorithm just crunches the numbers and finds these main directions of variation, statistically. And this is what it finds. These are the Eigenfaces. By the way, Eigen is a German word that means own or characteristic. So each one of these ghosts isn't a real person, it's a pure, distilled component of what makes a face a face. You can think of them as the basic ingredients, like flour, sugar, and salt, that you need to bake any face you can imagine. So if these Eigenfaces are basic ingredients, how do we actually use them to recognize somebody? Well, the best way to think about it is that every single person's face has its own unique recipe. And here's how that recipe works. You start with the average face. Then you add, let's say, a dash of Eigenface 1, maybe 70% of it. Then you subtract a little bit of Eigenface 2, say 20%. You keep doing this for all the key Eigenfaces. And that specific combination of percentages, that is the recipe. It's a unique code that describes one person and one person only. And check this out. You can see just how well it works in practice. On the left, we have an original photograph. And on the right, that's the face reconstructed using only its Eigenface recipe. It's not a perfect pixel-for-pixel copy, but wow, it has absolutely captured the essence of that person's face. Okay, this is all great for recognizing faces it's seen before, but what happens if you throw it a total curveball? What if you show the system a picture of, I don't know, a flower? How does it know that it's not looking at a face at all? Well, this is what happens. On the left, you've got a flower. On the right, that's the computer trying its absolute hardest to build that flower using only its face ingredients. The result is just a garbled mess because, a flower just isn't made of face parts. Now here's the really brilliant part.
The algorithm can actually put a number on that messiness. The paper calls it distance from face space, but you can just think of it as an error score. It's just a single number that tells you how badly the recipe failed. A low score means it was a good fit. It's probably a face. A really high score means the recipe was a terrible fit. Definitely not a face.
And we're not talking about a small difference here. The scale of this gap is just crucial. So in one of their experiments, a real face had an error score of about 30, and the flower score, over 5,200. I mean, that gap is so massive that the system can be incredibly confident when it says, nope, that is not a face. So the theory is super elegant, the logic is really solid, but, the proof is in the pudding. How well did this thing actually perform way back in 1991? Let's take a look at the results.
And for its time, the performance was incredibly strong. When the lighting changed, it was 96% accurate. When people turned their heads a bit, it was still 85% accurate. Its biggest weakness was when the size of the head changed a lot in the photo. Then it dropped to 64%, which definitely showed where they needed to improve.
But the big takeaway here is just huge. Eigenfaces was a pivotal moment in AI. It proved, for the first time, that a computer could learn to see faces as a whole, holistically, just by finding statistical patterns in data. It never had to be told what an eye or a nose was. It just learned the essence of faceness, all by itself. And that's why this idea from so long ago still matters. The eigenface was a foundational ghost in the machine, a simple, learned representation of a piece of our reality. Today, our AI systems are unbelievably more complex, and they're interpreting our entire world through language and images. So it leaves us with this final thought. What new and far more powerful ghosts are we creating in the machine today?